I still remember the day I saw Dotun and Halima stand by the old mango tree, their faces filled with joy. That joy would soon turn to sadness, and it still aches in my heart today. Dotun lived in a small village. His family were Christians, strong in their faith. Halima, on the other hand, belonged to a Muslim family. They lived just a few streets away. Despite their differences, they fell in love during their teenage years. At first, it felt like a sweet secret. They met in the quiet corners of the village, sharing dreams and laughter. They talked about the future, about how one day they would be together. But as their love grew, so did the weight of their family's beliefs. One evening, Dotun sat with me on the steps of his house. He sighed heavily, looking up at the stars.
I love Halima,
He said, his voice trembling.
but what will our families say?
I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to tell him love was enough, but I knew that wasn't true in our village. Halima faced the same struggle. I heard her cry one night, whispering her fears to her best friend.
My father will never accept Dotun.
She said.
He thinks our love is a betrayal.
Those words hung in the air, heavy and real. I wished there was a way for them to be happy, but it felt impossible. As the months passed, the whispers grew louder. Families talked, friends took sides. I watched Dotun's face turn from joy to despair. He would often sit alone, lost in thought. The village was small. Everyone knew everyone's business. The pressure was suffocating. One day, Halima's family found out about their relationship. I was with Dotun when he got the news. His mother burst into the room, tears streaming down her face.
Halima's family is angry. They say you must end this.
Dotun's heart shattered in that moment. I saw it in his eyes. I remember him standing at the mango tree, staring into the distance. Halima joined him, her eyes red from crying. They held hands tightly, as if that could keep their worlds from crashing.
We can find a way.
Dotun said, but Halima shook her head.
It's too dangerous.
Then came the day that changed everything. Halima's family arranged for her to marry another man. I watched her face as she heard the news. It was a mix of anger and pain. Dotun came to my house that evening, his hands shaking.
I can't let her go.
He said.
I love her too much.
I could only nod, feeling helpless. The next day, they met one last time. I followed them, wanting to witness the love I had seen bloom. They stood beneath the mango tree, tears falling freely.
I will always love you.
Halima said, her voice breaking. Dotun held her close, whispering promises that felt empty now. When they finally let go, it felt like a piece of me was lost. I stood back, hidden in the shadows, feeling the weight of their pain. The world around them faded, leaving just the two of them in that moment of heartbreak. Halima was married a week later. The village celebrated, but I felt only sorrow. I watched Dotun's smile disappear, replaced by a blank stare. He avoided the tree where they had shared so many dreams. Time passed slowly. Dotun became a shell of the boy I once knew. He rarely laughed, and the light in his eyes dimmed. Halima, in her new life, wore a forced smile. She wrote letters to Dotun, but they were never sent. The distance between them grew, built by walls of tradition and expectation. One night, I sat with Dotun under the stars. "Do you still love her?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes filled with tears.
Always.
He whispered. The pain in his voice echoed in my heart. In our village, love had been overpowered by the weight of belief. I watched my friends suffer, caught between love and duty. Dotun and Halima's story became a painful lesson of what could never be. Years later, I still think of that love, lost beneath the mango tree. Sometimes, I wonder if they still think of each other. In the end, love wasn't enough, and it hurts to know that their hearts will forever carry the scars of a dream they could not fulfill. Halima's marriage was not filled with love, but with duty. She tried to be a good wife, but her heart was elsewhere. The man she married was kind, but he wasn't Dotun. Every day, she prayed for peace, for strength to accept her fate. Yet, every prayer brought her back to the same feeling. She had been torn away from the one person who truly understood her. Religion stood like a wall between their love. Halima's family believed that marrying someone of a different faith was a sin, and Dotun's family feared the same. Their love was seen as a betrayal to their beliefs, and the pressure from both sides was suffocating. No matter how strong their feelings were, it wasn't enough to break through the walls of tradition and expectation. Dotun refused to move on. Friends and family encouraged him to marry, to find someone who could bring joy back into his life. But he couldn't. "There is no one else," he would say, his voice empty. The love he had for Halima was all-consuming, and there was no space left for anyone else. He avoided the village gatherings, especially weddings. The sight of love brought him only pain. Years passed, but the wound never healed. Halima's letters, though never sent, piled up in a small wooden box she kept hidden. Dotun too wrote letters, pouring out the feelings he could never say out loud. He kept them in a drawer, reading them over and over, as if the words could somehow bring her back to him. Halima's marriage became a life of quiet suffering. She had children, but even they couldn't fill the emptiness she felt. Every time she looked at her husband, she saw the life she was forced into, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dotun's face. She prayed for forgiveness, but deep down, she knew the only thing she felt guilty about was not being with the man she truly loved. Dotun's pain took a darker turn. He stopped smiling altogether. His eyes, once full of hope, were now empty. He spent his days in silence, working, sleeping, but never living. People stopped asking about his future, knowing he had given up on it long ago. He still visited the mango tree, the place that held all his memories with Halima, though now it was only a reminder of what he had lost. One evening, years after Halima's wedding, Dotun didn't come home. The villagers found him by the river the next morning. He had drowned, though no one knew if it was an accident or if he had finally given in to the weight of his grief. Some whispered that his heart had simply stopped, broken beyond repair. Halima heard the news and collapsed in tears. She wanted to scream, to run, to somehow undo the years of pain, but it was too late. She locked herself in her room for days, refusing to eat or speak. Her husband tried to comfort her, but his words fell on deaf ears. In her mind, she was with Dotun, back under the mango tree, where their love had once felt so full of promise. In the end, their love couldn't survive the forces against it: religion, family, tradition. Dotun's refusal to marry, his slow descent into despair, and Halima's quiet suffering were all signs of a love that had been forced apart. They had both lived half-lives, their hearts tied to a dream that would never come true. Halima stood by Dotun's grave, her tears falling onto the earth. She whispered, "I'm sorry," but she knew no words could bring him back. She placed a small letter, one of the many she had written to him, on the grave and walked away, leaving behind the only man she had ever truly loved. Their love had been real, but in the end, it was not enough. The village carried on, life continued, but the memory of Dotun and Halima's love lingered, a reminder of the tragedy that comes when love is forced to bend beneath the weight of the world. After Dotun's death, the village was never quite the same. People spoke of him in hushed tones, as if his memory was something sacred, too painful to discuss openly. The mango tree, once a symbol of hope and young love, became a place of mourning. Villagers avoided it, out of respect for what it had come to represent, a love that had been broken by forces beyond anyone's control. Halima's life continued, but she was no longer the woman she once was. She carried the weight of her grief silently, her heart shattered in ways no one could mend. The years passed, but the emptiness inside her never did. Even in her quietest moments, she thought of Dotun, the boy who had loved her beyond all reason, beyond the limits of their world. Her children grew older, but even they could sense that something was missing in their mother. She loved them, but there was a distance in her eyes that even they couldn't bridge. Her husband too noticed the change, but he said nothing. He had always known that a part of her belonged to someone else, to a past he could never touch. One afternoon, years after Dotun's death, Halima found herself walking to the mango tree. It had been a long time since she had visited, but something drew her there that day. As she approached, she felt the weight of the memories come flooding back. The laughter, the promises, the tears, and the heartbreak. She sat down beneath the tree, feeling the rough bark press against her back, and closed her eyes. For a moment, she let herself imagine that Dotun was there with her, just as he had been so many years ago. She could almost hear his voice, feel his hand in hers. But when she opened her eyes, the reality was cold and empty. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time she didn't try to stop them. She cried for the life they could have had, for the dreams they had lost, for the love that had been stolen from them. She cried for Dotun, whose heart had given out under the weight of their impossible love. As the sun began to set, Halima whispered into the fading light, "I will love you forever, Dotun." Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried all the emotion she had kept locked inside for so many years. For the rest of her life, Halima visited the mango tree whenever she needed to feel close to Dotun. It became her sanctuary, a place where she could grieve for the love they had shared and the life they had been denied. She never spoke of him to her family, but in her heart, he was always there, a ghost who walked with her through every moment of her life. As the years passed, Halima grew older, her once black hair turning silver. Her body grew weaker, but her love for Dotun never faded. She spent her final days in quiet reflection, often sitting by the window, staring at the sky. Some nights, she would dream of Dotun, of his smile, his laughter, his love. In those dreams, they were together again, free from the chains that had kept them apart in life. When Halima finally passed away, it was said that she died peacefully in her sleep, with a faint smile on her lips. The villagers buried her beside Dotun, under the shade of the mango tree that had witnessed the beginning and the end of their love. Though their story ended in tragedy, their love remained etched in the hearts of those who had known them. Dotun and Halima's love had been beautiful, but the world had not allowed it to flourish. It had been torn apart by religion, by duty, by tradition. And yet, even in death, their love lived on, a testament to the power of the heart and a reminder that some loves, no matter how impossible, never truly fade. After Halima's death, the village once again found itself awash in grief, though this time there was a strange kind of peace in it. The villagers who had watched Dotun and Halima's love story unfold like a tragedy in slow motion seemed to accept that, in death, they had finally found the unity that life had denied them. The mango tree, once a symbol of heartbreak and loss, became a quiet monument to their enduring love. As time went on, the stories of Dotun and Halima were passed down among the village elders, told in quiet tones to the younger generations. Their story became a kind of warning, a sad reminder of how deeply love could be affected by the rigid boundaries of tradition and religion. But it was also a story of devotion, of two people who, despite the world pulling them apart, had never truly let go of one another. The mango tree stood as a living witness to it all. Seasons came and went. Children played beneath its branches, and the village grew older. But every so often, a villager would come and leave flowers beneath the tree, a small, unspoken tribute to the love that had bloomed and died there. Dotun and Halima's graves, side by side beneath the tree, became a place of reflection for many. People would come to sit quietly, lost in their own thoughts, wondering what could have been if love had been allowed to thrive without the crushing weight of expectations. For some, it was a place of mourning. For others, it became a place of hope. A hope that one day, love would no longer be dictated by anything but the hearts of those who shared it. In the end, Dotun and Halima had not lived the life they had dreamed of, but in their love, even with all the pain and sorrow, they had found something eternal. Though they were gone, their story lived on, a quiet reminder to all who passed by that love, even when it cannot survive in the world, leaves its mark in the hearts of those who dare to feel it. Their love had been suffocated by the world, but in death, it had become unbreakable, untouchable by the rules and traditions that had once kept them apart. It lived on in whispers, in memories, and in the quiet rustle of the leaves of the old mango tree, forever standing as a symbol of a love that couldn't be kept, but could never truly die. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, like the video and comment on what you learned from the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the part 2 of this video, The Love We Couldn't Keep. Thank you.